Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video to hear me talk about connecting IT with the business by using the Flow framework and making work visible. So I hope this will be interesting to you, and let's get right into the presentation. So a little bit of context. So I work as part of the DevOps team, and in this situation in September 2022 in the DevOps team was that we were swarmed by unplanned work. We had a big roadmap about working in an internal developer platform, but we kept getting requests about creating new infrastructure, giving people accesses, patching security bugs. So basically, we needed an extra team member or members to be able to account for all these things. So we told this to management, and I think the reply was, well, what's your metrics? Can you provide us metrics so that they can track our progress? I think this was specifically a conversation between Damien and Mathieu Franet, but essentially they said, we need these metrics. And the reason why they asked this metrics is because from the point of view of the business team, I call them the business team, but we call them the C-suite or C-level executives, doesn't really matter. What these people wanted and what they needed is, okay, they were asking them for a decision to invest more in our team, and they're trying to balance out, well, is that investment going to return us value? So they're asking us for metrics to be able to gauge what was our progress in the past and how much they could get out of it. Unfortunately, we did not have these metrics, so we could not answer this question. And so we hired a new member, but they had to trust us. We were not able to give them metrics, and this made it a little bit more difficult to persuade. So, what we did actually between September and November, we met once per week to brainstorm about which metrics we could provide to the business. And we had lots of ideas. We knew about DevOps metrics. There was a lot of metrics floating out there, so we had lots of ideas, and it's all documented in a Confluence page. But we got stuck eventually, as you can see on November 7th, 2022. That was the last time we met. Essentially, we said next time we'll meet with some partners who will join the business and help us start tracking some metrics because we're not really sure in which direction to go. So what I knew back when we were brainstorming, this is the ideas I had in my head. I knew one thing. I knew from reading the DevOps handbook that lead time is the best predictor of quality, customer satisfaction, and employee happiness. And it makes sense. If you think, what is lead time? Essentially, the definition of lead time is, if you look at this picture, the time it takes between a customer expressing the need to the world, I want a pizza. That the timer start at this moment, and the timer stops when the customer gets this pizza in their mouth. It's the time it takes to satisfy a customer need. So, of course, the faster that time is, the more our clients are happy. But also, if for example, we have a big outage in production, if our lead time is slow, we can address it as fast as possible because we're delivering value to extinguish the fire, for example. And if lead time is short, employees are more happy because they see the output of their work in the world more quickly. So, how can we improve lead time and delivery? It's a big question and it's a difficult one to answer. Uh, the reason why it's difficult is because bottlenecks in manufacturing are visible. When you measure lead time, you have to do it from end to end, from the moment the customer gives you their needs to the moment that you deliver it. And in manufacturing or in the pizza delivery world, you can see these things moving in real time. In software delivery, they're invisible. And so that's very difficult to track. If you're a CTO, you're never going to see a pile of software artifacts just piled on top of each other. It doesn't happen like that. It's completely different. So we have to think about these things differently. In October, all the DevOps team at Nesto, we attended a conference called DevOps Days Montreal, which was in Montreal, and the first talk given by Martin Delonchamp completely blew my mind. It was about the flow framework and value stream management, and basically my talk is going to be uh, more or less a rephrasing of his own talk, but he's giving ideas. He's not pitching, but he's telling us about a book called Project to Product that contains fascinating ideas that I'll discuss, and it put me on the road of this talk. So I just want to give credit where credit is due. So after reading these two books that were on the previous slide, Making Work Visible and Project to Product, I made some new discoveries. And this is the goal of this talk, is to give these discoveries to you so that I can give you some suggestions from the point of view of the DevOps team. The first thing I'd like to coin is the term watermelon projects. So watermelon projects, easy to understand. It's projects that are green on the outside but red on the inside. Uh, think of uh, think of a project, for example, you're working on something and you have a manager who asks you, "Are you on track?" So they ask you this question: "Are you on track? How's it going with your project XYZ?" So you tell them, "Yep, I'm on track. Everything is good." And eventually the release happens, and either it happens too late, so the manager is unhappy, either it happens and it doesn't satisfy the customer need. So uh, in the end, it looked red on the outside from the management perspective, but it was red on the inside. It was not it was not according to spec. How did this happen? How did we deceive management? The reason is that the question, "Are you on track?" is ambiguous. The metrics that the manager uses to determine if projects are on track are different or don't apply to the metrics that the person answering yup would use to say that they are on track. So this leads to painful discoveries, and this is what we want to get rid of. So the mission, and I'm putting it out there right away, our mission is to connect the business with the IT. We want to be able to speak the same language, to have interesting conversation, and to be able to know ahead of time if projects or products are in great shape or in bad shape. So in her book, Making Work Visible, Domenica de Grandis talks about the 5 thieves of time. And initially, my entire talk was going to be about these thieves. So I'll list them right away because they're important. So the 5 things that steal our time, either it's in your personal life, either, it can be anywhere. What wastes our time when we're working on something is too much work in progress. If we're constantly switching between tasks, every time we switch, that creates friction that loses some time. Unknown dependency, when you didn't expect it, but as you start your task, you have to wait on something or someone. This wastes time because you committed to starting, and now your hands are tied. You cannot do anything. Unplanned work. If you're working on something and someone dumps a pile of work on you saying this is more important than what you're working on, this is going to slow you down. Then conflicting priorities. When you don't know which priority is the right one, when everything looks important, you're going to have analysis paralysis and you won't be able to choose. And finally, neglected work is work that is unfinished and doesn't bring value, but you're still working on it and it's not finished and it's kind of a zombie project. So I have all these slides ready if you want me to talk about them in some other talk. It's a little bit more suited for local optimization, but that's the thing. We don't want to do local optimization. We want to solve bottlenecks throughout the entire company. And we always have to remember this law. If we make an investment in another area than the bottleneck of the company, these investments are futile. So if you look at this hourglass that I have, if we invest a lot of time in expanding the B part or the A part, it's not going to make the sand flow faster. We have to expand at the C part. This is where the bottleneck is. Any improvement we do at B or A is meaningless until we improve C. So, uh, for example, from the point of view of the DevOps team, we have bottlenecks as everything does, but are we the bottleneck at Nesto? Is it really us that is preventing value from flowing quickly? Personally, I'm a little bit biased, but I don't think so. And honestly, before we make this kind of decision to invest in a specific part of the business, we should visualize our value streams globally in order to make sure that we make the right decision. Toute connaissance de cause, as they say in French. We looked at everything and we're able to identify. Let me give you an example. Going back to the pizza example, every step has what we call a cycle time. So the flow time is the time it takes when the work starts. So when your customer on their app says, "I want a pizza," lead time starts. But the flow time actually starts when someone in the pizzeria starts doing something. So the first one, it will be the chef. So he would have his own cycle time. How much time does it take to do the pizza? And then it will be the delivery person. How much time does it take to drive to the person who ordered the pizza? So in total, that gives us the flow time. So the chef might say, hey, you know what? I'm doing the pizza. I'm doing the most value because I'm producing what the customer eats. I am owed a faster oven, a bigger oven that will heat faster. And so if you give me an oven, if you invest $20,000 in me, I'll be able to crank out more pizzas. So that sounds nice in theory, but the thing is, let's take this specific example. It's not the chef that is a bottleneck. Actually, the company did not invest in their cars at all, and they keep breaking down. So the chef might not be aware of this. The chef only knows about their pizza. But if we look at the whole and we realize, you know what, 50% of our deliveries has car issues, mm, maybe we should buy cars instead of buying a new oven. The new oven wouldn't reduce lead time, buying new cars would. And so this is why it's important to know the entire value stream. So I'll change subject a little bit. I'll talk about metrics now. When we were the DevOps team brainstorming about metrics, we were focused on what I call proxy metrics. So proxy metrics measure activities, unlike outcome-based metrics that measure results. It's important to make distinction because the business people do not, should not use proxy metrics that measure activities. Proxy metrics, for example, are the number of story points per sprint, number of people trained to use Agile, deployment frequency, all things that the tools we use as part of Agile, as part of DevOps, are very easy to get. The reason they're easy to get is because they are local. They are not part of the entire value stream. When we look at lead time, net promoter score, the amount of WIP, this gives us insight about the value of the product that we're giving to the world that is exiting our value stream. So activity metrics are basically, if you look at the cartoon character in the lower left, you might be working very, very hard at something. You might be doing a lot of activity. But if it doesn't derive value, sorry, buddy, the business is not going to invest in you because there's no value. The business needs value. So um, proxy uh, the proxy metrics that I pointed out, the number of story points per sprint and all that, are only meaningful if the training of Agile or the deployment of the pipeline are the bottleneck. Maybe they are, but maybe they're not. And if the business is disconnected from IT, if they have no visibility about the value of what the IT is doing, then the pipeline, for example, will never get the opportunity to become the bottleneck because the business won't, it's invisible to the business, so they cannot make the decision to prioritize to invest in that one. So always keep in mind, working hard doesn't mean providing value. And this applies not just in business, it applies in real life. That's why we're trying to work as efficiently and as smartly as possible. And always remember that C-level people can only interpret outcomes. They should not interpret IT activity because this is misleading. So they don't and they should not. So let's talk about the flow framework. This is the new theory that emerged in 2018 from the book Project to Product. And I think it's a recipe that will allow us to connect the IT to the business. So this entire picture that is a little bit too small to see summarizes everything. We'll go through piece by piece in summary, but uh, but yeah, it's a very important. It's not easy to build, but I think you will see that the steps to connect the business to the IT are not simple, even though they have to be done. So it will be worth it. Before I begin, I want to give you some definitions. So the value stream, what do I mean by a value stream? It's very generic. It's the end-to-end set of activities performed to deliver value to a customer through a product or service. So our teams are segments of a value stream. It's very rare that one team will own a value stream completely. I don't know personally on the tip of my fingers the value streams at Nesto. I don't know how many they are, and I would love to know. But let's say, for example, one of our value streams is multi-tenancy or mortgages. Maybe that's our two value streams. Do we have more? Maybe. So in these two value streams, we have maybe 10, no, maybe not 10, but maybe 5 teams working on each value stream, doing their little work, part of the value stream to give value. So we have to think in terms of value streams. Okay, this is important to shift our way of thinking. And all the teams are are value manufacturers that inject value in the value stream. Okay, so value stream, that's one definition. The other definition looks small, but there's another slide dedicated to it, is flow item. So a flow item, what is it? It's a unit of business value pulled by a stakeholder through a product's value stream. It sounds very generic. Again, I'll give you some examples. So these are the four types of flow items that the author of Project to Product, uh, through his research, determined that they were the only four types. What I love about these four types is that they're mutually exclusive. So if you think about a work item that you're working on in your project, if you're a developer, in theory, it is either a feature, a defect, a risk reduction, or a debt, addressing a debt. It cannot be more than one of these at the same time. These things are mutually exclusive. Uh, so features are things that bring value. Defects are things that bring quality, so that we can rely on these a bit on these features. Risks are reduced, so you have better security, things like that. And depth is interesting. It's a little counterintuitive, but it's everything you do to make sure that if a future architect, software architect, joins the project, it will be easier for them to make their vision a reality. They won't have to dig through spaghetti and you know bend, so that they can fit inside the current architecture. So these are the four flow items. Let's say we map everything we do in our company into one of these four categories. Okay, we look at everything we work on, all the flow tickets, and we map them. What we would get is a flow distribution. So this kind of chart. We would be able to tell per month how many features, how many defects, how many risks, how much depth did we work on. And okay, this is a graph, but you should notice that it's a different kind of graph. It's not a proxy metric graph. This is a graph that the business understands. Business understands that if you request a lot of features, you will not be able to work on depth because you have a limited capacity. So this graph shows this. It shows the trade-off between asking for features, asking for defects, and it shows the trends. Sometimes maybe you relaunched an application and you got more defects from customers calling you, and so you didn't have time to work on features. This is all reflected in the graph, so you can learn from it if you launch another product in the future. So it's transparency for everyone. It's even transparency for people downstream. If you're working on a value stream, and there's another value stream depending on you, if you can show them this flow distribution, they'll be able to predict the output of your value stream. Are you bringing more quality this month? Are you bringing more features? Are you working on security and no features? This is invaluable. And this is the first step to connect the business to the IT, is to reduce the amount of types of work to these four items and to show them in this distribution like this. If we do this, what we will get is we'll be able to measure flow metrics because we will have mapped end to end work items. Well, not yet, there's steps to do that, but imagine that we have a feature and we can see it from the beginning all the way to the end of the value stream. You can remember the pizza example if you want. We have these four metrics that again are outcome metrics, and they can be measured from the flow items that flow through our value stream. So these metrics can be understood by the business because they directly correlate to value. For example, the flow velocity. This is the number of items done in a given time. For example, during the month, how many items were completed. So this is something you can see evolve over time, but also it's not a measure of activity because the faster the velocity, the better it is because you always want more features. You always want less defects. You always want less risk. You always want less debt. So if you maximize the output of these flow items, it's always a good thing. So flow velocity is something that the business will want to maximize and will want to invest in. Flow load, it's a kind of the opposite. If you have the flow load is a number of active or waiting flow items in your value stream. So if you have too many flow items, then you will crumble under the weight of you will crumble under the weight of what's requested, because you will always be switching between context, and this friction, as we know, is a time thief that will waste time. So we want to reduce the flow load to make sure that we don't exceed capacity. And actually, I'll just show you this graph from mathematical queuing theory. Sounds very fancy, but it's basically the study of queues over time. You can think of this as a computer. As we go towards 100%, the time it takes to do anything grows exponentially. And this is why some companies have a policy of never ask your team to work more than 80% of their capacity. Always give a 20% of your day to do whatever. Some companies tell that to their employees, and the reason is simple. It's not because they want them to work on new innovative projects or whatever. It's just to give a little buffer to make sure that the waiting time doesn't get into the exponential regime. So flow load is something that if you track over time, you will be able to tell, okay, this value stream can handle a flow load of 15. If we go above 15, then the time it takes is too big. So we know we won't allocate more work to this team. This is the right amount of work. Just like when you go to a gym, you don't want to take too much weight. You want to know just what's the right weight to get stronger. So that's flow load, something invaluable to measure. Flow time, simple again, the time elapsed in the value stream. So if you have fast flow time, you have probably fast lead time. So this is a metric you will always need, and it was known for a long time. This type of metric is invaluable. And finally, interestingly, flow efficiency, it's a little bit similar to flow time, but it tells you how much time that the item spent in the value stream was spent waiting. So this is the aim of this metric, is to track the unknown dependencies. Because if I do the pizza and it's ready, and I wait for the delivery person to come pick it up to give to my client, and I wait for 20 minutes, maybe I made my pizza in a minute, but our flow is very inefficient because we waited 20 minutes out of the 21 minutes it took, uh, over 21 because you have to do delivery. But anyway, very inefficient, as you can see, because we're waiting so much. So let's summarize this in a graph, because I know I talked about lead time, I probably talked about cycle time, and now there's flow time. So we track flow efficiency by dividing the amount of active time over the total amount of flow time in the value stream. This gives us the efficiency. If we find the value streams that have low flow efficiency, we find bottlenecks. So now we know where to invest, and by resolving this bottleneck, we get less waiting time, which means better flow time, better lead time, and all the positive outcomes that we know and love that come with it. So imagine, okay, what it would look like to have these 5 metrics in real time. You would have something like this, a value stream dashboard. You could have this for all of your value streams. So I pretended Nesto had 2 value streams. Well, these might be these 2 value streams. And you would get their flow distribution, their flow velocity, their flow time, their flow load. And this is something that immediately anyone understands. Either you're a developer, either you're a business person, you understand what happens when you redo some of the boxes in the distribution. What does it mean if the velocity is faster or slower? These are easy to interpret, and it's hard to get it wrong. So very nice, right? Just by mapping our work items into 4 categories of flow items, we can start all speaking the same language, and that's really what we want. But that's not it. That's not all. That's it, but that's not all. There's also business results metrics. We cannot integrate the business side of the story without having some business metrics. So all this talk of fast flow time, it doesn't really matter if it's not bringing in money at the end of the day. You want to maximize your money, and not just money, you want the quality of life of your employees, for example. So the author outlined 4 business metrics that are important to keep in mind, that you have to track to make sure that you're really talking to the business, that you're really talking to their heart. The first one is value. You can't get around that. You have to know how much value in dollars your value stream is bringing to the company per month, per day, per year. You have to know this thing to be able to know, should I mess with this? Should I invest more? Should I get rid of it? You have to know your value. You also need to know your cost. This value stream might be giving me $1 million per year, but it might cost me 3 millions to make it run. So it's not worth it, right? Unless I'm making a future investment and I know what I'm doing. So in the cost, you track the cost of all the staff assigned to the value stream, maybe even the staff that is tracking the value stream, the cost of operations, the cost of infrastructure, everything you factor it in that is related to this value stream. The quality, that's the quality of the product perceived by the customer. So the business people that invest in a value stream, they will say, okay, for example, I will invest in your company or your value stream, but only if it makes my product better. So you want to see an outcome of that. For example, by the Net Promoter Score, this is something we already track as part of the business. We want to make sure that when we invest money in our software, the customers see it and they like it, and they give this in their reviews as reasons why they chose us. We want quality. We have to be able to reflect it and bubble it up. And finally, one that I really like, again, a little bit counterintuitive, but it's happiness. You have to track the happiness of the staff working in each value stream. This will probably tell you if one value stream is doing well, and if not, maybe why. Because it's frequent that there's a correlation between being unhappy at work and providing a bad output. So if you find that for a value stream your employee engagement is going down, then it's time to invest. It's time to spend time with this value stream and understand why is it going down, and is it dead actually? Because do we have to wait until it's completely down to kill it? Can we kill it in advance? So I know that was a lot of stuff: flow metrics, business metrics, flow distribution. So this is the top part of the flow framework that we looked at, and is invaluable in connecting IT to the business. But before we get all this metric, before we get all this nice stuff that we can finally visualize, we have to talk about all the bottom half to connect the end to end, to do the entire path to make sure that all the work is tracked and leaves a trace everywhere it touches. Every member who works on this leaves a little trace, or has a trace, or knows what they're working on. We have to find a way to track everything, to have traceability between everything. So it's not easy, and the goal of this presentation is not to go in all the details of how to do this, though I will give some suggestions. But we have to know one thing, and it's this little epiphany that I hope you will have. I'll do my best, but it's the following: every bottleneck in the company is due to disconnected value streams, and these disconnects are what will drive your company down. A very concrete example: at one point, DevOps received a ticket. It's pictured in the lower right. It's called Add Missing Permission to Service Account for Swagger Server. It was created on August 4th. As you can see, the DevOps team marked it as won't do on December 19th, which is 2 days ago. So there was over 4 months between the creation of this ticket, which seemed urgent, to the time where we said we won't do it. What actually happened, right? What happened is the following: the DevOps team that was asked to work on this is not the team that originated this ticket. This came from a need somewhere else in the company. The DevOps team has no idea. Why do they have no idea? It's because this ticket was linked to another ticket in a disconnected value stream. What happened was probably this: Team A was asked by their management to create a new feature. So they would create their new feature as a ticket item into their backlog of work. Then, as they groom their backlog and they prioritize it, they will see this work item. They will look at it and they say, okay, one of the steps in order to do this is to ask DevOps to fix this missing permission. Or maybe even worse. Maybe they divided their ticket, and as one member started working on it, they realized, oh no, there's an unknown dependency. Remember the time thief unknown dependency? There's an unknown dependency. I have to contact DevOps to create a new ticket. Okay, so this is the chain of command that led to the creation of the item on DevOps. And that works. It works one way, relatively easy. The problem is going back. And what probably happened in the real world, in the real life, in this example, is that Team A suffered the loss of a member. One of their team members went away, and that team member was a big proponent of having the Swagger server. And so nobody is pushing the Swagger server initiative anymore in Team A. So much so that it has been deprioritized. So not quite deleted. This might be something they want to do in the future, but it's not important anymore. And they completely stopped thinking about it. Well, that's great for them, but the DevOps team has no idea of what's happening. And the fact that it was canceled upstream, they were not informed downstream. There is a disconnect between these two tickets. So that was a mistake on the people involved, myself included, because I'm part of the DevOps team. But we really should have asked, okay, what is this ticket related to in your backlog? That way we would have been able to notice, hey, this weird ticket, it's linked to something that the team A marked as won't do. So we probably should not do it, right? Because we didn't take this traceability in mind, we wasted a lot of time dragging this work item in our cognitive load, in our backlog, when we should have just got rid of it and stopped talking about it forever. And, you know, we shouldn't have spent any time on this. Any time we spent on this was waste. So this is a big epiphany. And I'm spending a lot of time on this slide, but I think it's important because it happens again and again and again in every value stream in most companies today. So I was talking about this epiphany with someone at lunch, and they told me, you know, the reason this is a problem is because we're not using the same tool. Okay, different example. I'll change slide, but Team A and DevOps are using the same tool. They're using Jira. But in the real world, we have Asana also, that is a big uh, un outil chouchou of the business people. Well, Jira is disconnected from Asana. It would be so much better if we could decide as a company, okay, we're using either Asana or either Jira, but not both, right? This is duplicating work. This is what's creating the disconnect. So it's easy to blame this on different tools and saying, it would be so nice if we could connect, but we have to stop saying this. The reason why we have to stop saying this is because this complexity is here to stay. So the hard disconnect between tools, there's going to be more as time goes on. The reason is simple. There is fundamental complexity in the work that we do, and some tools are no, not some tools. All tools. There cannot be a tool that is the best at everything. And as a company, you want to be the best. You have to take the best out of everything and combine it in what works optimally for you. Uh, I cannot use Gmail to do my code management, for example. That doesn't work. It's possible. I should not do it because there are right tools for the job. So fundamental complexity is here to stay because stakeholders specialize, they get better, they give you better value. They have to use the tools that allow them to work. We will get more and more tools. I should note that there's accidental complexity. That is, for example, when you have a merger. If we were a bank and we worked with Python and we acquired another bank that worked in C++, well, we don't want to. This is an accident, right? We would have preferred if they used Python as well. But the fundamental complexity, that is something you cannot get rid of. You have to keep, even though it kind of seems like it sucks, you have to keep it. You have to get over the fact that it sucks. Uh, Let me show you a concrete example. In our team, we were able to connect two hardly disconnected tools. GitHub is a company that gives you software that allows you to do code management, and Jira, their product is that they allow you to track work items in a dashboard. So these items are disconnected. They're owned by different companies. And when we work on one, it doesn't know that we're working on the other. What we did is that we started, as you can see on the left, there's line items, and the first column shows commit messages. Basically, when you modified the code, this is what the developer wrote down. You see that some of them have DevOps dash a little number. So this is a ticket number in Jira in the backlog of the DevOps team. So let's look at DevOps 516. This is a hyperlink. We click on that, and the reason it's a hyperlink is because we we added a little a little feature in GitHub that can recognize these code numbers. But anyway, we click on that, and it brings us to Jira. So let's say I look at the line item, uh, I see, okay, DevOps 516, this is the work item. I don't understand the commit message. It's not giving me enough information. Let me look at the context. Oh, wow. I see it was to update the Pulumi and service model. And there's all this big, nice, juicy description that gives me context. I understand the commit message. So if I'm a developer and I have to work into into old code, then I won't have to remember, I won't have to have been there to know the context. I just click there and I find the ticket. Bam, clear as day. This is what prompted this modification. Okay, I understand. Moving forward, I can maybe even track the work related to this work item. Gee whiz, that's nice. So we started doing this 2 months ago. It was an amazing idea, and we didn't even realize it at the time. It's just something that we said, oh, let's do it. And 2 months later, I see a huge, huge advantage. Some teams already do this at Nesto, some teams don't. So we have to find a way to get this common traceability. Some teams are benefiting from this, some are not. So imagine if we could connect the entire business like this. Imagine if we could connect our entire tool sets like this. If Matic was curious enough to know, okay, okay, I asked for something and it's not working. It's supposed to be giving me red, but it's giving me green. God darn it! I want to see where it is. Imagine if he was able to click on the work item, to find the work item in the dev backlog, and to actually see. Imagine Malik looking at the code and seeing the line that does his feature. You know, this is what we want. This is what we need because we want this visibility. We want this transparency. Okay, I'm getting a little philosophical, but I don't know if you're moved by this, but I'm moved because the DevOps team it changed our work dramatically. A little part of our work, but it's a big part that saves a lot of time. Remembering context takes time. This is why it's long to switch between tasks. So by having this, we minimize friction, easy. And this is something that the pattern is connecting tools together and following the trail of the code change to learn from it. Okay, so this is nice and good. Okay, we did it between GitHub and Jira. The good or sad news is because these tools already kind of supported this connectivity, right? We just had to enable flags, and it did it for us. We didn't have to think very hard and be very smart about this. Um, but what if you wanted to do this between other tools? Maybe you know the entire Nesto company doesn't just use GitHub and Jira. There's Asana. I don't know how Salesforce works, but maybe this is related. Uh, there's many tools. There's Confluence. There's Slack, etc. It's going to be complicated. So, what the flow it's hard to say. What the flow framework says for us is that we have to integrate our tools together. The first step is to make sure that a flow item uh, can be described d'une façon équivalente, equivalently between tools. So if I have a feature in Jira, I want to be able to have an intermediate translation layer in this picture. That's the model that will be able to relate to an epic in another tool like Asana. So this is the type of work that we will have to do to get our flow framework. Sorry, flow framework flow framework going. And there's more, and this is where it gets a little complicated. I don't want to spend too much time on this talk about this, but there's the activity model that tracks the activity state, like is it new, is it waiting, active, or done? And there's the product model that links all your work items together so that you know what creates a product. So this is wonderful. This is connectivity at its peak. But Instead of going into the details of this, remember the time thieves. And let's put the time thieves on the right and the flow framework on the left. What's amazing is that if we're able to get this running, if we're able to build the flow framework and take value from it, we immediately, as an entire company, put the light on the time thieves and finally we're able to get rid of them. So, how does that work? So the biggest time thief, too much WIP, uh, you immediately see it with flow load. That's one of the metrics of flow. This will tell you how much each team is working on at the same time. If you're able to identify this, you've identified too much work in progress. Now, the flow distribution will get rid of conflicting priorities uh, because if a manager tells you work on features, and another manager tells you, well, work on security. Security is more important. The flow distribution you will be able to look at and say, aha, uh, this month we cannot plan features because we have too much security issues, and so the flow distribution will give you insight on that, and we'll be able to prevent this event where you don't know if you should work on features to please a client or work on security issues to make sure you satisfy your auditors. Neglected work. So this will be taken care of by the product model. How does that work? Remember, product model is we take all of the assets that we have to assemble to create a product. For example, Nesto Mortgage, that's the name of the company, but if we have a value stream called mortgage, what makes this, you know? So if we plan all our products to all the things that drive them, what will happen is we will have big products with all the things connected, and at the bottom, we will have work items that are connected to nothing. What that means is these are the work items that are wasting time and that are kind of done, but semi not done, but not done enough at least to provide value to one of our core products. So you will know right away, get rid of this neglected work. You won't even feel bad about it. You won't even second guess it because you know they're not connected. There's no way it provides value. Unplanned work that is killed by the value stream itself. If you see the work coming in and you know your position in the value stream, you will have all the time in the world to expect it and to see it coming to your station. It won't be like, "Hi, I'm gonna have a nice day today," and someone says, "Whoa, you have to work on this feature for tomorrow because the client needs it." No, this will not happen anymore because you know where you are in the value stream and you will know months ahead that business is asking for this feature in 6 months in the next quarter, and then it will have created work items for you that will reach you in your station even before the time arrives to deliver it. So this is huge. And finally, the unknown dependencies. Uh, when you are able to track uh, what each ticket, remember the ticket item that we talked about, the Swagger server, if you're able to track this work item is related to this other one, and if you, okay, this one, je la maîtrise moins bien, but you will get rid of it, okay, I promise. So how can we create these networks? Okay, if you're like me, if you understand all of this, you're pretty much sold on this theory. But the real question now is this is a huge challenge, and it's how do we do it? Like I don't know, honestly, me myself, and I'm supposed to. This is supposed to be my job. So how do we create it? What's the recipe? What I found is that some vendors provide integration with other vendors like Jira and Asana. I didn't say it earlier in my example, but they do provide integrations between each other. Sometimes you're lucky like that. Sometimes you're not lucky. Maybe you're a bank and you're using an old tool that doesn't integrate with Asana because it's not developed anymore and Asana didn't exist when it was created. So you're out of luck, you know. So in this case, there are some companies that offer built-in solution like Tasktop. I'm a fan. I'm biased, so I have to tell you right away because the book that I wrote that sold me on the Flow framework was written by their CEO. So you know, but they have great-looking products. I'll show them to you so you get an idea. So the video I'll show you is Tasktop Hub. It shows you how creating an item in the so they have different software, so I'll remember these names. There's Jama, there's Jira, there's GitLab, there's HPE, and I think that's it. So work will be created in JAMA. Then you will see a ticket being created in Jira automatically. And then you will see a developer working in the ticket on GitLab. And this will create all the changes downstream. Okay, this is the demo. So let's look at it now together. Presentation woes. Come on. Serious.
Out to a database, allowing Zentry Furniture to run analytics and reports on its software delivery process. Let's see this in action. Here we have the actual JAMA interface on the left and the Jira interface on the right. Here in JAMA, the business analyst for Zentry Furniture creates a requirement, system handles multiple warehouses. Now, the developer in Jira sees this requirement show up in his tool as an epic. The developer can now break down the epic into 2 smaller child stories. Now, let's see this in HPE ALM. We've minimized JAMA on the left and brought up HPE ALM, Zentry's testing tool. In HPE ALM, the system handles multiple warehouses requirement shows up along with the child stories from Jira, and the parent-child relationship stays intact. Now we're going to minimize HPE ALM and show how the Zentry developer on the left commits the code. The developer commits code to the team's Git repository and includes the Jira ID of the story in the commit message. Behind the scenes, TaskTop then automatically creates a change set link on the Jira story for traceability. Finally, bringing up HPE ALM again on the left, we see that the Zentry Furniture tester has created a defect. The total inventory is not summing correctly. The tester has added a comment, an attachment, and this defect is blocking the, as a regional manager, I need to see all inventory requirement. You can see that information has synchronized to Jira on the right side of the screen. Finally, going back to our overview, all of these requirements, epics, stories, defects, and their changes are being sent to a database to allow Zentry Furniture to report on them. This integration scenario would take years for most organizations to implement on their own. By using TaskTop, you can set it up in about an hour with no coding.
All right, so I'll have to say, when she says you can set it up in about 1 hour, I'm a little bit, I doubt that, even though we're pretty good, we're pretty smart. I doubt that, but I think this is something that we could maintain, that we could certainly get set up in 2 to 3 months, and then we could work on and maintain over time to make sure that it's always up to date and integrates everything. But I'm blown away by the possibilities of this, and I think they really understand what they're doing. Not only that, but if you use their products, you can use Viz, and this will track all the flow items because Viz is created around the flow framework. So you have to, it already knows what the flow items are. It already understands this theory. It just pulls it in from all the different tools that you work on and puts it in. So anyway, Viz knows all about this and creates your metrics. Sorry, it even finds its old bottlenecks. So anyway, I'm a big fan of TaskTop. I like to get an estimate on their price. So I recommend you view this this video from Mick Kirsten if you have the chance. If you're able to have a spare 33 minutes to look at the flow framework. And these are my recommendations for the DevOps team and maybe to you. So thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to your feedback, and I wish you a very, very nice day. I gotta stop recording. Okay, bye.